My son refused to go to bed because he said, "My dreams are starting again." Claire's voice trembles as she recounts the night everything changed. The wind pressed softly against the glass, the sound almost human. Ethan stood in the doorway, rigid, his tiny voice trembling with certainty. Not fear, the kind that comes from knowing. He said the man in the gray mist had spoken his name again, had promised to return when the lights went out. Claire brushed off the story, trying to smile. But the way his words clung to the air made her chest ache. She told herself it was imagination, but something colder was breathing between them. Then Ethan whispered, "He said he's coming for you too, Mommy." The lights flickered, and the silence that followed was thick enough to break. The next morning felt almost normal. Sunlight spilling through the curtains, coffee scent in the kitchen, bird song faint beyond the glass. But Claire couldn't shake the heaviness pressing against her chest. Ethan sat quietly, spooning cereal without a word. When she asked about the dream, he only said, "He's closer now." His tone was calm, matter of fact, as though he'd accepted something she hadn't. Claire's smile faltered. For a moment she thought she saw mist curling under the doorframe, too thick for morning air. The house creaked again, and this time it almost sounded like breathing. Claire brought Ethan to Dr. Leon Adler the following afternoon. The psychologist's calm voice filled the sterile office with practiced patience. He called it night terrors, a subconscious manifestation of anxiety. An explanation that should have comforted her. But when Dr. Adler asked Ethan to draw what he saw, the boy's crayon moved without hesitation, carving a tall gray figure with no face, surrounded by circles of black mist. "He talks to me," Ethan said softly. "He says Mommy saw him first." The crayon snapped in half. That night, rain hammered the roof like impatient fingers. Claire tucked Ethan in early and left the door open, afraid to close it. Near midnight, she woke to the sound of soft footsteps, not upstairs, but just outside her room. She held her breath, listening. The steps stopped. Silence pressed against her ears. Then, faintly, the baby monitor clicked on by itself. A whisper bled through the static. "Don't look at him, Mommy." Claire froze. She hadn't turned it on. Ethan didn't sleep the rest of the night. When dawn came, he sat upright in bed, eyes wide and unblinking. Claire crawled beside him, exhausted, trying to comfort what she no longer understood. He turned to her and whispered, "He said tonight's the last night I'll dream alone." Claire's blood ran cold. She realized then that the mist outside wasn't just weather. It was waiting, patient, and hungry, the same way a promise waits to be kept. The morning after, the air felt heavy, like the house itself had been holding its breath all night. Claire tried to erase the memory of whispers, convincing herself exhaustion had played tricks on her. But when she walked past the living room, Ethan's drawings scattered across the coffee table stopped her cold. The one he'd done in Dr. Adler's office, the faceless man, had changed. The crayon lines were darker now, as if freshly drawn. And worse, the mist that once circled the figure now stretched out, forming what looked like a second hand, reaching toward a woman's outline. Claire felt the world tilt, her vision narrowing until she could almost feel the cold breath behind her. The house exhaled softly. Claire called Dr. Adler again, her voice trembling with something she couldn't name. He invited her to his office that afternoon, promising calm answers and recorded notes from their previous session. But when he played back the tape, something impossible filled the room. A second voice layered beneath Ethan's words, faint but deliberate. It whispered, "She remembers, Doctor." Adler stopped the tape, eyes wide, color draining from his face. For the first time, the calm professional facade cracked. "This wasn't here yesterday," he said quietly. "Who else has access to this recording?" Claire didn't answer. because the whisper sounded too much like her own. By dusk, the fog had returned. Thicker, more deliberate, curling low across the street like smoke with a purpose. Claire stood at the window, watching it swallow the neighborhood, one porch light at a time. Ethan sat behind her, silent, his small voice finally breaking the stillness. "He's walking now?" When she turned, he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the mirror beside the window. The reflection showed her standing alone. Behind her, the space was empty. But in the mirror's corner, the faint outline of a tall gray shape lingered, head bent, as if listening. That night, Claire didn't sleep. She sat beside Ethan's bed, watching him breathe, counting the seconds between each exhale. The air inside the house was still, unnaturally so. Around 2:17 a.m., the nightlight flickered, and for the briefest moment she saw mist spilling from beneath the closet door. Not like vapor, but like something alive. She stood, pulse racing, reaching for the handle. A whisper brushed her ear. "You left me there." Claire's knees buckled. She didn't know if the voice came from the room or from her own memory. Claire woke from a daze on the floor at dawn, unsure if she'd ever truly slept. Ethan was still in bed, pale but breathing, his hands clenched as if holding something invisible. The fog outside hadn't lifted. She remembered fragments of something. A field, a gray sky, a voice calling her name when she was a child, a name she had tried to forget. Then she saw it on Ethan's wall, drawn in thick charcoal strokes, a field of black mist and a woman standing in it, her face the mirror of her own. And beneath it, a single word written in a child's hand: return. The morning after, Claire went searching for proof, something to break the fever of her mind. She tore through old boxes in the attic, the dust of years catching golden light through the slats. Among forgotten photo albums, she found one marked 1989. Inside, a picture of her as a little girl standing in front of the same house, the same window, the same forest. Behind her tiny figure, blurred by exposure, was a gray shadow, human-shaped, watching. Her stomach turned to ice. That was the summer her father disappeared without a trace. For 30 years she had buried it, convincing herself memory lied. But the shadow hadn't aged. It was waiting. She returned to Dr. Adler that evening, the photograph clutched in her coat pocket. His face drained as he studied it, and without a word he fetched another cassette. One recorded years ago, during a forgotten session with another patient. The static cleared, revealing a child's voice that wasn't Ethan's, but eerily familiar. "He's in the mist," the girl said. Claire's hand went numb. Dr. Adler looked at her gravely. "That voice is yours." Her pulse thundered. The same figure that haunted her son had been visiting her for decades. And somehow, she had invited it back. That night, the fog didn't come from outside. It began inside the house. Claire woke to find it spilling down the hallway like a living tide. The air smelled of rain and iron. She followed it, heart pounding, until she reached Ethan's room, but he was gone. The window was open, mist curling inward like fingers. A trail of small, barefoot prints led out into the yard. She ran barefoot into the cold, calling his name. The fog swallowed her words. Then she saw it. The same field from her childhood dreams, unfolding behind the house where the forest used to be. Vast and endless, humming with distant whispers. The figure beside Ethan was taller now, unmistakably human in shape, but wrong in every other way. The mist wrapped him like a shroud, never revealing what lay beneath. When Claire reached out, the air grew colder, and his voice rolled through the fog like thunder swallowed by distance. "You brought me back," it said. "You promised." Her memories split open like glass. The night she was 8, standing in that same field, whispering to the mist to take her nightmares away. It had listened. But the bargain wasn't forgotten. It had waited for her son to dream again. The bloodline's key to return. The dream man extended a hand toward her son. Claire lunged forward, screaming his name. But the fog resisted her like water, turned solid. Ethan looked back at her with calm eyes. The same calm she'd seen in the photo of herself as a child. "He says it's okay," he whispered. "He just wants to go home." The wind roared as the field darkened, the horizon swallowing its own light. Claire reached into the mist, her skin burning cold where it met his. "You can take me instead," she cried. The air stilled. The air stilled. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then the dream man turned his head, and the whisper came, "You already did." When the fog cleared, Claire wasn't sure if she was still awake. The field looked endless, the air thin, metallic. The moon above hung too low, its light trembling like breath. Ethan stood a few paces ahead, frozen mid-step. Everything around her pulsed faintly, as if alive. Then she saw them, outlines of children scattered in the distance, unmoving, half-formed, like memories that never grew old. She called Ethan's name, but her voice echoed back, distorted. The dream man's whisper followed. "Every promise needs a keeper." And Claire remembered what she had promised, that she'd trade her dreams for peace. She hadn't known peace was a living thing that demanded to stay. The mist rippled, and suddenly Claire wasn't standing in the field anymore. She was 8 again, lying in her childhood bed, hearing the same whisper she'd once called imaginary. The walls of her old room pulsed with gray light. Her father's voice came from the hallway, calm and steady. "Go to sleep, Claire." But she remembered. Her father had vanished the night she stopped dreaming. She turned toward the sound, and there he was, older now, eyes hollow. "You left me here," he said, voice trembling. The gray mist behind him thickened into the dream man's form. Claire realized her father hadn't disappeared. He had been claimed, and now it wanted the next in line. The dream man's voice filled every corner of her mind, soft and commanding. "You asked for quiet, and I gave it. You asked for peace, and I took the noise." Images flooded her. Her father's sleepless nights, the day she begged the mist to make her dreams stop, and the night the whispers ceased when he vanished. The dream man had granted her wish, but the silence came with debt. "One child's fear for another's rest," he said. "A fair trade." Claire fell to her knees, choking on guilt. Her childhood prayer had built a cage, and Ethan was its inheritance. "Let him go," Claire whispered, her voice shredded. "Take me. End it." The fog trembled with something like laughter. "You already belong to me," it said. "You traded your voice long ago." Her mind burned with fragments of the past, the nights she'd sleepwalk, whispering words she didn't remember, the childhood illnesses the doctors couldn't explain. It had always been there, feeding. She realized then that silence wasn't absence, it was ownership. Ethan's breath grew shallow, his body fading like mist in sunlight. Claire's scream tore through the void, breaking the stillness that had ruled her life. Something in her snapped, not from fear, but defiance. Claire stood, her voice breaking free after decades of silence. "You can't have him," she said. "You only exist because I let you." The mist recoiled, trembling like wounded flesh. She realized the creature's power was belief, the echo of her own fear carried through generations. Every promise it kept, she had allowed. Every silence she had chosen, She took Ethan's hand, gripping it tight. The fog screamed, the world bending as cracks of light tore through the field. For the first time, Claire felt her voice truly return. Raw, human, unstoppable. The fog shattered like glass under the force of her voice. For a brief, impossible moment, the night went silent. No whispers, no wind, just the ragged sound of Claire's breathing and Ethan's heartbeat against her chest. The field was gone. They stood in their living room again, the clock blinking 3:00 a.m., the walls still trembling from something that didn't belong to this world. Claire clutched her son, whispering that it was over. But when she looked down, Ethan's pupils glowed faintly silver, and his voice came not as a child's but layered, hers and his together. You can't break what you've already become, he said softly. Then he blinked, and the light went out. Morning came, but the sunlight felt wrong. Thin, pale, filtered through something unseen. Claire bathed Ethan, dressed him, tried to return to routine, but every mirror in the house held a flaw, a faint shimmer of movement when no one stood there. When she pulled his pajama sleeve to dry his arm, she froze. A faint gray mark spiraled up from his wrist, delicate, circular, like smoke trapped under the skin. Ethan smiled faintly, as if comforted by it. He says he's sleeping now, he whispered. Claire's hands shook. The dream man wasn't gone. He was inside. That evening she heard it again. The humming, the low, rhythmic pulse she once mistook for the wind. It was coming from Ethan's room. She crept in quietly and found him sitting upright, eyes closed, whispering in a language she didn't recognize. The sound was soft but heavy, ancient, vibrating through the walls. When she touched his shoulder, the air rippled. And for an instant, she wasn't in the room but in the mist again, surrounded by whispers calling her name. The dream man's voice came from Ethan's lips. You tried to silence me, but silence is what gave me form. Claire screamed herself awake, but the echo followed her into the light. By midnight, the fog had returned outside, heavier than ever, pressing against the windows like an ocean. Claire knew what had to be done. The old stories her grandmother once whispered surfaced in her memory. The one who binds the silence must unmake it with sound. She gathered the candles, the recorder, and her courage. Ethan watched her quietly, no fear left in his eyes. She pressed the record button and began to speak. Not prayers, but truth. Every memory she'd buried, every lie she'd told herself, every ounce of guilt that had fed the darkness. The fog writhed, recoiling as if burned. The dream man screamed through the walls. The world seemed to collapse inward. The fog burst through the windows, the candles flared white, and every clock in the house stopped at 3:03. Claire grabbed Ethan, holding him close as the dream man's voice rose from the walls, pleading now instead of commanding. Without you, I am nothing. Her voice shook, but she answered with calm certainty. Then be nothing. She whispered Ethan's name, kissed his forehead, and exhaled into the air, her final surrender of fear. The sound tore through the house like thunder, splitting the fog apart. The mist screamed once, then vanished, leaving behind a silence that felt pure. The morning was impossibly still. No hum, no whisper, no sound but the faint rustle of leaves beyond the window. Claire awoke on the floor, her arms still wrapped around Ethan. The candles were nothing but wax puddles. The air smelled of smoke and rain. She whispered his name, heart pounding, until his small fingers twitched against hers. He opened his eyes, soft, gray, unclouded, human again. Relief flooded her like sunlight through broken glass. But something was missing. The world felt drained, as if every sound had been scrubbed clean. She called his name again, louder this time. He smiled, but didn't answer. Doctors called it trauma. They said children sometimes stop speaking after severe emotional shock. Claire nodded, but she knew better. Ethan wasn't afraid, he simply couldn't. At night, she'd find him standing at the window, tracing shapes in the condensation with his fingertip. Circles. Always circles. She tried to ignore the chill that followed, but one evening as the light faded, she saw the faint outline of her own breath on the glass, forming a word she hadn't said aloud in weeks. Listen. The air felt heavy again, though the fog outside never returned. Weeks later, Claire visited Dr. Adler one final time. His office smelled of old paper and dust. He listened silently as she spoke. No interruptions, no diagnosis. When she handed him the last recording the night of the breaking, he didn't press play. Some things aren't meant to be studied, he said softly. Some things just end. But as she turned to leave, he stopped her. Claire, when I sleep now, I dream of a field. A voice in the mist says your name. Her heart froze. She forced a smile, thanked him, and left without a word. As winter crept in, Claire and Ethan moved to the city, leaving the forest house behind. But before they left, she returned one last time. Alone. The fog had not returned, but the trees still whispered with memory. She walked to the field's edge, the air brittle and sharp, there buried beneath frost and leaves. She found a single object glinting faintly, a child's crayon, broken in half, the same kind Ethan had used that first night. She picked it up, holding it against her chest. For a moment she thought she heard a sigh, a soft, contented exhale. Not haunting, not hungry, just done. In the city, the days passed quietly. Ethan began drawing again. Birds, trees, faces. But no mist, no gray. He laughed silently now, his joy wordless but pure. Claire worked, lived, learned to breathe again. Yet every dawn, when the light first touched their apartment walls, the silence carried a familiar echo. Not haunting, just watchful. She would whisper, "Thank you," and the air would seem to answer, not in words, but in peace. The circle wasn't broken. It was finally still. Sometimes, stillness is the kindest form of mercy. It happened months later, on a night without fog or moon. Claire fell asleep beside Ethan's bed, something she hadn't done in a long time. The city was quiet, the hum of life beyond their window, soft and distant. In her sleep, she heard it, a single note, low and pure, like a heartbeat drawn into sound. She opened her eyes and found herself standing in the field again, though it wasn't cold this time. The mist was gone. Instead, thousands of tiny points of light floated in the air like fireflies. At the center stood Ethan, smiling, and beside him, the outline of the dream man, no longer gray, but transparent, glowing faintly gold. "He's free," Ethan said. His voice returned at last. He just needed to be remembered. Claire realized then that the dream man had never been born of malice. He was memory. The echo of every voice she had silenced through fear. Every nightmare she'd buried became his form. Every wish for quiet, his prison. When she spoke again, he was listening not as a monster, but as a child learning how to be forgiven. "What happens now?" she whispered. Ethan took her hand, smiling softly. "Now, we wake up." The dream man bowed his head, the light around him rippling like breath, and for the first time she saw his face. It was her father's, peaceful, young, and unburdened. The dream man extended his hand, not in threat, but invitation. "You may stay," he said, voice like rain through glass, "and guard the silence with me. Or wake and keep it safe in the world." For the first time, she understood the choice was hers, always had been. She turned to Ethan, who looked up at her with a child's love and an old soul's calm. Go, he said softly. You already gave enough. She smiled through tears, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Then I'll keep the silence, but I'll make it sing. The field dissolved into light. Claire woke to sunlight on her face. She was in her own bed again, the air filled with the scent of coffee and rain. Ethan's laughter echoed faintly from the kitchen. Real, human, full. She sat up slowly, the world sharp and alive around her. On the nightstand rested the old tape recorder, the light flickering once before fading for good. She pressed play anyway, though the tape was blank. A single whisper emerged. Her father's voice, calm and distant. It's done. Claire smiled. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was whole. That night, as the city lights shimmered beyond their window, Claire watched Ethan sleep, his breathing steady, dreams gentle. The fog never returned, yet sometimes when the world went utterly still, she could feel it. The quiet presence of something vast and kind watching over them, not haunting, guarding. The circle wasn't broken, but fulfilled. Karma had found balance. In giving up her silence, she gave it meaning, and as she drifted to sleep, she whispered into the dark, Thank you for keeping the dreams alive. Somewhere, faintly, the wind answered.